much for joining us today, everybody. We'll just get started as we wait for more participants to join us. So today's topic is on pharmacists in global health, and we are glad to host you again for our another session of the Health Roundup. So my name is Hezron Munyakin, and I'm the founder of Planet Wizard magazine and also a team player agriculture. So before I get started, I'd just like to share a few ground rules. And first is keep your microphones muted. And the other one is please note down your questions and concerns. They'll be responded to at the end of the session. So I'd now like to welcome our speaker for the session today, Dr. David Odhiambo, who will be taking us through the topic. So welcome, Dr. David.
Thank you so much, Hezron. It's a pleasure being here again, knowing that our discussions keep continuing and we keep trying to share as much information as we can towards improving access to healthcare services and improving health outcomes for every other person, every individual in the world. So that's the main focus of why we do these discussions. So as you've said, Hezron, our topic for today is pharmacists in global health. And when we look at it from the aspect of pharmacists in global health, personally, I'm a pharmacist, and we look at it in terms of what kind of impact can we drive in that global health space as pharmacists. And every other pharmacist, probably we're looking at it from the point of somebody's in the pharmacy space, but I don't know whether their interest is aligned to the global health kind of work. And if not, then how can they get involved? And if they're interested, probably they'll get the interest from the discussion that we're going to have. And beyond that, there are people who have an interest, but then they've never known how to tag in. So there's other aspect that we're going to look into. Then finally, because as pharmacists, we are oriented to offer services and products that are quality, safe, and effective for the individuals in their care of health outcomes. So our angle is, how do the public, the people we commit to serve to provide quality healthcare services to, get to obtain benefits and outcomes from the use of the services we offer? How is the public uptake going to happen? And if the public doesn't have an understanding of what we do in the global health space, then the possibility and the chances of them taking up those services might be minimal. And that means our impact would not be as much as pharmacists in the global health space. And therefore, it's important that as pharmacists, aspiring pharmacists, we get to know what our role in global health entails, and the public to know what our scope of work in the global health space entails, so that they can take maximum value from it. And as pharmacists, we can prepare ourselves to be able to deliver competently, diligently, and passionately towards the realization of quality health outcomes for every other individual in the healthcare space. So that is the focus of our discussion today. So to start it off, we'll look at what global health is. Global health is a field of health and medicine generally. It looks at the practice, the research, and optimization of intervention that improve health outcomes, factoring the social components of health and the individual, the medical component. So it is an interface between the clinical work and the social bit. And the reason as to why it differs from the other components that might be looking at the same thing is public health, we have international health and related, is that we're looking at a condition that has an implication on a global scale. Currently, we are all contending with the pandemic COVID-19, which started in Wuhan, China in 2019, December. So this is a public health concern because when you look at the impact, the condition, the disease, the outbreak started in China, but at this current point in time, so many people have lost their lives, so many families have been disrupted, and the impact is not only in the context of costing people lives and the medical implication. It even goes beyond in terms of the economic impact. We're looking at people who lost jobs. How does that affect the quality of health they have? In the outset of COVID-19, people are looking at what are the psychosocial impacts. People are having mental health pressure issues, mental health conditions as a result of the pressures of COVID-19 as a pandemic. That is a global health concern. Look at some other concerns that we're having in terms of, let's say, female genital mutilation. It might be happening in a particular context, a particular condition, but then it denies someone a chance to live their lives fully and comprehensively, meaningful livelihoods. And when they can't attain their meaningful livelihoods, the impact they would have in making the world a better place, contributing in a particular line of work, is hindered because of such kind of devastation, such kind of acts that are happening. So it means there's a role that we can't play in that space. Look at contraceptive use, sexual reproductive health. Access to contraceptives is a win for everyone because we are looking at avoiding unwanted pregnancies, which is important. And beyond unwanted pregnancies, we are looking at people getting to the extent of abortions. And abortions, they are not legally approved in certain states. And even in their approvals, there are different provisions on at what point you can get the abortion services. It therefore means if we get it to a point that people are not planning their families, one, unwanted pregnancies happen, some will consider abortion, which might be unsafe. And we realized that last week, but actually it was last week, we're having this case of a lady whose father tried to procure an abortion, an illegal, unsafe abortion. The lady lost her life. So what is the implication? What is the impact of that in the global space? It is so much, and we want to find a way that we can address these issues. And the other aspect that we look at it in terms of the global health, you realize it's a collaboration between different governments, different nations, and it is a global focus on issues that are affecting individuals in their local context. The greatest global health donor and support organization is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They invest in it, they pump resources, they engage individuals and the communities to realize that these people can get a chance to live a better life. And in them being able to lead meaningful and better lives, then the society is entirely empowered. And it means the inadequacies, the inequalities that we are seeing in our systems can be all gotten done with. And that is the aspiration. So can we make it happen? Well, that is where we have to look at every other person playing their role in the global health space and every other person merging forces and resources to know that we can deliver this. And when we deliver on it at a particular point, we are actually buffering the next generation. We are providing an anchor for the next generation, for the next number of people, and the people within our environment to be able to lead meaningful and productive lives. When they can lead meaningful and productive lives, it is a win for that person at a personal level, their family, the society, the community, and the entire nation, and even global scale, because there's a ripple effect on the good that we do at any one particular point in time. And that's a very important thing. So when we look at now and the aspect of now as a pharmacist, what does our role entail in the component of global health and we look at it in that space? One, we know we'll start from the basics. We know that whenever somebody thinks of a pharmacist or a pharmaceutical technologist or anything, in the pharmacy space, people see medicines. And when you see medicines, you know this is the person who will be responsible for ensuring you can get your medicines. You go to a pharmacy or a chemist or a hospital and you need medication, you reach out to that pharmacist knowing they'll give you the medicines. So the role of a pharmacist in the global health space when you look at medicine, it starts from research and development. Are they involved in development of therapies and drugs and vaccines that are responsible in ensuring we address some of the global health concerns? In a pandemic now, people are doing research to develop vaccines. Some people are looking at the plasmas, the antibodies and all that. Those are very important. And other people at the very same time are trying different therapies, and that's why we're having emergency use authorization for different therapies, azithromycin, several drugs, dexamethasone and all. They are being used in managing COVID-19 under the emergency use authorization to manage the symptoms. And any data that's coming from there is going to inform management of people and care for individuals who are affected by this disease. That is a component of global health. In research and development, we look at the other conditions that are manifested in this kind of space. We start from neglected tropical diseases. People are suffering from trypanosomiasis, leishmania and all, brucellosis. Like, how do we put in place measures to ensure people don't get to suffer from them as much? It needs therapies, drugs need to be available. Who is investing in them? And who knows that we need to invest in this particular way? The chemical component of the research as much can be driven by pharmacists, and I believe there's pharmacists who are driving that agenda. And when they're doing that research, it's going to ensure that we have treatments for people who need management. So that is one thing that we can look at in the drug chain, research and development of new therapies and optimizing those therapies to achieve positive treatment outcomes for patients who need them at the point of care. Beyond development, a drug is already in the pipeline. After the clinical trials and everything, it has been released. It is released based on the research data that was attained. And it's therefore the role of the pharmacist to ensure that there are different measures, environmental conditions that had to be met in that distribution of that product. Probably it's a cold chain product. Even now, with COVID-19, people are talking about very low temperatures that are required for storage of the different vaccines. Are we going to ensure the temperatures are attained? Because if we don't, it will be a vaccine getting to us where we are, yet that vaccine is not going to treat people, because it's going to get to us when it's already ineffective. And that any vaccine that doesn't have the therapeutic value is of no essence being distributed to the public. And therefore, that is where we have to acknowledge that as pharmacists in the distribution chain, ensuring the right storage conditions of the different drugs are met before we get to giving them out to the patients. Then after the distribution chain is already sealed, and that is another component that we have to look at in the supply chain, we have falsified some standard and counterfeit pharmaceutical products. And we know even last year we had an issue of Augmentin that was falsified and a counterfeit product in the market. Augmentin, the original, is produced by the GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, a UK-based company. And they do their work to ensure the integrity of the product, the quality is inherent. But then when a counterfeit product comes into the market, the risk is every other public individual who will be using this drug has a risk of not being cured or suffering adverse effects. And there's nobody to be held accountable because the company didn't produce the counterfeit. And it's therefore the people involved in the supply chain, and our regulatory frameworks provide for a qualified pharmaceutical practitioner who is a pharmacist or a pharm tech who has met the standard qualifications that are needed. So it is upon the pharmacist to ensure that is met. Very important at that point. Then when it gets to the hospital practice or the community pharmacy practice, you need to give your medication to your patient. Is it the right medicine for them? Is it being given at the right time to the right patient? And when it's being given the right patient, the right drug to the right condition, then is it the right dosage, the right intervals? So that at the end of the day, the patient doesn't suffer any adverse outcome from using that drug, and there's documentation to ensure you follow up. And at that point of care now, we move from the supply chain beyond the research, the pharmaceutical practice. And in the pharmaceutical practice, as a pharmacist, as a qualified individual, it is your responsibility, one, to assess whether the patient is using any other medications. That is where we have medicine reconciliation, knowing that if there is a chance of a drug-drug interaction or drug-food interactions, you'll curtail it before it happens. And that is a very important bit in practice. Then after medicines reconciliation, medication therapy monitoring. They have the fast metabolizers, slow metabolizers, and the different interactions that happen in an individual. And therefore, as a pharmacist, you need to know, is the patient attaining the recommended levels of the drug in their circulation? If you can't assess that because of lack of the equipment, then you need to see the response of that patient so that you know their kidney function, liver function are optimal over a period of time. They are getting better from the use of these medications, and that is a win for everyone to ensure that the patient don't suffer as much. Look at it, for example, patients who are on chronic conditions, who have chronic conditions are on chronic medication as well, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular conditions. In this case, this person has to be on their medication for a long period of time. And in medication therapy monitoring, they have been taking, let's say, metformin for the diabetics, and glibenclamide, probably they have two agents that are used. You need to ensure that this patient, the sugar levels are already controlled for a period of time to ascertain that they're achieving benefits out of that management. If you can't continue following up on that sugar levels, then you're failing that patient, and that is a critical role of the pharmacist. When people come to you at the practice setting, vaccination, are we offering vaccinations? If we are not offering it, how do we ensure the vaccinations are being achieved by everybody who needs them? And that's a very critical component, because we realize now, in our context, we are talking about community health workers offering vaccination, which has been working well under the Kenya Extended Program on Immunization, KEPI. It's a move that is working, it's achieving its outcome. But we ask ourselves, what about the far-flung areas where you find there's a community pharmacy and the distribution chain is a little interrupted? Power supply is an issue as well. The cold chain management. Can we integrate community pharmacy into delivery of quality healthcare services, especially vaccinations, in the very remote regions? If that can be integrated, then we'll achieve the quality that we need and the positive outcomes that we want. That is a very important bit we need to look into, as well as community pharmacists or fast pharmacists in the global health space. Then, sexual reproductive health, menstrual hygiene management. The government launched out a program that was earlier taking place, and in the government program, there was a move to provide sanitary materials to students and ladies in the different schools. It was a good move. However, with the COVID-19, there were disruptions. And then you ask yourself, what if all the community pharmacies would be in a position to have an engagement like the Retail Pharmacy Association, engages with the government and the different distribution and Ministry of Health, so that instead of having this program get crippled because schools are not operational, we integrate community pharmacies as centers of distribution, so that you have a role from the school, and the role from the school is going to guide distribution from the community pharmacies. It will be a contribution to the community in ensuring that ladies and women in that community can have access to the menstrual hygiene management materials and products that they need. That is a win. But unless we get to that point, we're not going to achieve its outcomes. And that is where now the issue people will talk about, the already sanitary materials that are being sold in these pharmacies and these outlets. Why would they distribute the free ones? Well, it's not all about the money. At the end of the day, you have the ones that you're selling, people will buy them some, but there are people who can't afford the ones you're selling. Why don't you give an alternative chain of which they can access the others? And this is something that I've seen happening in other developed countries. You look at, I've been reading more about Richard Branson and the work they're doing by the Virgin Unite group of companies. And the Virgin Unite, a number of companies pivoted to change their operational models to ensure they can deliver products. The Scotland's Community Pharmacy Initiative, PIP, Pharmacy in Practice, they have distribution with local NGOs so that people can access their medicines. And these are where now we bring in our ingenuity as pharmacists, our commitment to our communities to ensure people can access the quality healthcare services and high products that they need to ensure they live quality lives. And those are areas that are not yet fully exploited, but those are areas that as pharmacists, as pharmaceutical practitioners, we can look into and we can adopt them towards ensuring our communities are healthy, we achieve our agenda in transforming global health, and at the end of the day, everybody wins in that move. And those are very critical things that we need to look into. People coming to community pharmacies, for example, in need of contraceptives, do we offer them? Because we need to offer them. And then what scope of contraceptives? It's not only the P2s and the hormonal pills. We have the implants, we have injectables. Do we have the scope to do it? If it's not there, then even we should have to start asking ourselves questions as pharmacists. Do we integrate it in our training so that we'll be able to administer and give this kind of contraceptive services? Some people are not willing to go to the hospital, the mainstream hospitals, but pharmacies can offer them if we can engaging in those areas. And it's not only offering in terms of the product, it can be in terms of the counseling and guidance, because we acknowledge the impact of some of these hormonal contraceptives on individuals, but unless we talk about them, unless we guide them, people will be buying. And when we have a culture where people are pro making money, the chances of us selling even to an individual more than the recommended number of times in a year, then we are risking their lives, we are risking their safety, but for the sake of us making the money. It's 100 bob to buy a P2 or 200 between that range. So are you going to risk an individual's life for the sake of making money? Those are areas that we need to look into as well as pharmacists, and to ensure that we optimize our care for the patients who need our services. And it involves even the discussion that we're having about COVID-19 now. Do we educate our patients about preventive measures? Somebody is not wearing masking up, somebody is not using sanitizers, just hanging around, keeping no social distancing. We have a responsibility to mitigate some of these issues. And in mitigating them, we have to continue doing that. That involves in the health communication, health advocacy, and we need to enlighten everyone so that they know this is what we do, this is what is ideal for you. It might not be the best that you want to practice, but it is ideal for you. Take it up for you to be safe, take it up for you to lead a meaningful and healthy life. People on chronic condition, non-communicable diseases, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular like stroke and all that, there are people who are at risk and they have their medication they're using long-term. You need to monitor that therapy. You need to have a follow-up mechanism with these patients to ensure they achieve positive treatment outcomes from those drugs. And then now we know, as a population, we know there's a emerging issue of mental health. It's a burden that's rising. It's never acknowledged as much, but it is there. Look at it from the aspect that pharmacists, even in the hospital setting, the last person that a patient visits before they leave the hospital is the pharmacy, because they need to take their medication. And when they go there, whenever you are sick and somebody asks you whether you've gotten care, you'll tell them, well, nimepata dawa. It means you look at your care, your management, your treatment to be that medication that you've received. What if the pharmacy would have an individual, the pharmacist who is qualified, having psychological psychotherapy counseling skills, so that when you get there, they give you your medication and they do some little counseling. They can assess whether you need psychosocial support. And when they assess that you need it, they are able to offer, if it's the minor psychosocial support, psychotherapy sessions. And beyond that, they can have a signposting kind of referral system where they can link you up now to psychotherapy clinics in the environment where you stay, where you live, so that you continue getting access to mental health services. It can only happen when we have the qualifications, and it is integrated in the scope of services that we can offer based on the need. So those are areas that are still gray areas, and those are areas of exploration as people in the pharmacy space and as people who are have an interest in global health. And when we can get into that space, the positives that will be achieved by the society that needs them will be much more than we would have envisioned. But we have to acknowledge that there is a role for us to do there. There's work to be done, and we can do it. That has been on mental health. HIV/AIDS and management. Medications have been there. In the recent past, we have issues about Septrin, cotrimoxazole, and all. Septrin is cotrimoxazole. So when we look at the Septrin not being available, there is an issue in the supply chain. In management, the people who dispense these medications are pharmaceutical staff. So are we doing our work or not doing it? How do we improve on ensuring they have access to them? Then we need to factor the other component. As I mentioned at the start, global health looks at health from the clinical bit and the social bit, because we are social human beings. And I remember there's a discussion that I had earlier, one of the health roundup sessions that we had. There is a group of patients that I supported, the support group in Kasarani Health Center, the young people living with HIV/AIDS. And young people living with HIV/AIDS, we understand that we are social beings with a need for attention, need for love, and we need love social relations with people, romantic relationship or so. And from the discussion that we had, there is that aversion to disclose your HIV status, especially when you know you're positive, because the chances are the person you're interacting with will not be willing to entertain you and to be with you because you're positive. So what happens? You fail to disclose, you engage with this person or these people sexually without using protection. It means our global targets of achieving 0, 0, 0, the triple O. That is 0 new infections, 0 missed clinic days, and 0, nobody is not attaining remission. So the 3 zeros. 0 new infections, 0 missed clinic days, and 0 missed doses from the antiretroviral therapy. If these people are not able to disclose, then it's a loss for everyone. How do we ensure they get to disclose? How do we ensure that we factor every of their social components in our management to ensure that they feel open and free to get the help they need? They have the social support system where they don't feel like people will be judging them because of their HIV status. If we can get to that point, we'll have achieved our goal. Because these are issues that are happening and they are within us in our societies. We see them every day. However much we might try as much as possible to deny and fail to acknowledge that it is an issue, it is. And it is upon us to do the work that needs to be done. It starts with me and you doing the work that needs to be done. So those are issues. And now another burden that's happening, antimicrobial resistance. Everybody, when they feel a little uneasy, a little unwell, having a cough, the first thing is amoxicillin. And then from amoxicillin, we go to azithromycin. Like everybody's taking antibiotics without any rational reason behind it. And what's happening is there is something called resistance. And with antimicrobial resistance, any infection that used to be treated or to be killed, the microorganism that used to be killed by the antibiotic that you're taking will not be killed. It means that infection will be persistent in you. And it is me, it's you, it's any other person who might be doing that. And when it happens, chances of dying from community-acquired pneumonia, the common pneumonia that you know, will be so common. You have a wound that doesn't heal. It means you have to cut off your leg or amputation and all that. Is it really necessary? So it starts from knowing antibiotics are not sweets. They're not like Strepsil that you'll take whenever you feel a little discomfort in your throat. They are antibiotics. They are used to kill antimicrobials. And therefore, with that, we need to ensure that we use them when it's necessary for the right conditions. And if it doesn't work, we need to know how to manage them. And it's not only in you using them as a patient. Some of us are using them in managing our animals, in veterinary products, agricultural produce, we are farming and spraying them. Probably you find a person has been told, when you inject your animal with this drug for a period of time, you should not use the milk for the next 48 to 72 hours. But instead, as a farmer, you realize that the economic cost will be too much. So instead, you as a person, you're not using it, but you're selling that milk to another person. That person will be taking that milk without knowing it has the antibiotic in it. Already they're being exposed to subtherapeutic levels of the antibiotic. Resistance develops, and the system doesn't choose that it's this person who took the medication. When that antibacteria in that person gets transmitted to you, you'll just get sick as well. And the challenge is you'll have already exposed it to the tetracycline or even the amoxicillin, the penicillin that you did. So it won't treat you, it won't treat the other person. And in the next few years, we'll be seeing people dying from conditions they won't die from. People staying in hospital for more than 6 months or even more, more than a year, because of conditions that we would have avoided. It's my antimicrobial resistance. We have to be rational use of antibiotics. And even in animal production, environmental control and all, we need to do the right thing. That's a very important thing. Then as pharmacists who are here as well, there's a lot of work in health policy and health advocacy. Issues that I've talked about, sexual reproductive health, and neglected tropical diseases, NCDs, pandemics and responses, there is advocacy and policies. There are guidelines that are guiding us in everything. Even now when you're talking about COVID-19, how do we come up with the guidelines on how to manage them? There is policy. And that policy space doesn't have as much pharmacists, yet we have pharmacists who are qualified, who are able to drive that agenda. You need to be engaged because in a way you are in touch with the people you take care of. You are in touch with the medicines and the chemical components, the therapeutic component of how these work. So if you can get into that space and exploit it perfectly well, positive outcomes for everyone. That is an area that's not done. Regulations, as I mentioned, substandard, substandard, counterfeit, and falsified products. They're in the market, but it's up to us to ensure the regulations are tight. I can identify, let's say if I find out an augmentin that is fake and an augmentin that is original, there are some key features in the packaging material that we have to acknowledge. Even the labeling, the parallel importation and all that. You have to see, no, this has an issue, this doesn't have an issue. And we have an end-to-end integrated pharmaceutical supply chain so that we don't expose people to counterfeit or substandard products. That is not as much utilized. We still can get into that space. And most importantly, we need to collaborate and engage with so many people in the space. They are community health workers, they're sociologists, they're anthropologists, they're veterinary doctors, they're medical doctors in the whole space of global health. As I started from even pandemics, climate change, then different environmental issues, social issues that we are facing in our societies, we have to integrate everyone who is involved, even the community leaders, so that we understand the background of that problem, put it to context. Once we have it in context, we can now design a solution that's going to address it. And that is what we need to do. So we need to collaborate as much as possible. Well, beyond the pharmacist, as a member of the public, you come into contact with the pharmacist. Do you give them as much information as they need to make a right decision for you? You are diabetic, you've been coming for your medications at the community pharmacy, and I've been selling you those medicines because you come for them and you say you've been using them. So I'll sell them to you. But do I know your sugar levels in the last 1 week or even 2 weeks? Probably you're never taking it. You need to ensure you monitor your sugar levels so that you know whether the drugs are working or not. Your blood pressure, you're taking antihypertensive medicines. Is it working? If it's not working, what should we do? If you don't disclose as much information, there's no way we can help you. In the outset of this issue that we're talking about, HIV/AIDS management, patients were continuing with the antiretroviral therapy, but they were not having Septrin. Some are having some of the minor infections arising, some are developing wounds and sores on your bodies. But unless you disclose that that is an issue, then you'll miss out on the medication, or even you don't give us a reason to advocate. We could say, oh, you can just stay without it. But if we know the impact of it, the challenges that you're having, then it gives us room to intervene and support and ensure that we drive action to bring the medicines. We bring them when they're needed. If there's no need to procure them. And that need comes from the patient sharing that much information of what is needed and what can be done to improve their care. So the patient has a role to give that information. Beyond giving information, are you actively inquiring to know more about your condition? Because there's a point that you can give so much information and leave there blank because you never ask for anything. So the person is making a decision on your behalf without you being informed on what needs to be done. Seek clarification because you need it to know whether you're being managed the right way or not, and even to have confidence that you are having the information on your condition. We are talking about self-care. You don't know about how you're being managed, you'll just take it for the sake of taking it. Why are you taking it? You can't even justify for yourself. Share that information, seek more information. You have adverse reaction. You've been taking a particular drug, and instead of getting well, you're getting headaches, you are feeling nauseated and all. Any drug reaction, any adverse effects that you feel, your rashes on your body, you need to respond and report that to the pharmacist. It's important. You bought some medication or you dispensed some medication at some point, you used them and stopped along the way. Any of these unused medicines, expired products, you need to have a way of consolidating them and disposing them through our pharmacy chains, because there's that recall process that we have to discard pharmaceutical products. So are you doing that? If you're not doing it, you're risking even aspect of antimicrobial resistance are still growing because of that. So we need to keep sharing that information. We need to keep engaging. We need to transfer that information and that responsibility in ensuring that we do the best. In global health, contraceptive use, it's not the pharmacist who wants you to use it. It is what you need to ensure you are leading a healthy life and a productive life, not suffering unwanted outcomes. So know that you have a responsibility as a patient and do what is needed of you. It's important. Then other than that aspect of being responsible and it, look at it, for example, in COVID-19, people are not wearing their masks and all that. It is lack of responsibility or maybe, or distrust in the government. But however much you distrust the government, you distrust the system, doing the wrong thing doesn't make it right because every other person is doing it. So you have to look out for yourself and see whether you're doing what is justifiable for you. Do you want to be part of the statistics of the people who are suffering? If not, you better do what needs to be done. Because if you do that, that will be a win for you. And we have to get to that point. Then we have to advocate for what needs to happen. In a community setting, we have individuals we interact with. Do we share information with them? Let's say there's our public health, medical camps and all. We need to integrate with community pharmacies, with the pharmacists in the space, bring them on board because they have the information. Probably some of us are doing it because of the political reasons, some are politicians. So they want to show the communities that we are taking care of your health. Engage the community pharmacists because they have the competencies. They are part of your community. After a medical camp that maybe an MCA hosts in 2020, they'll never host one up to 2022 again when they need votes. So will you stay without getting care in the meantime? No. So that is why you need to integrate your pharmacist in the care so that when these medical camps are happening, they're either part of it or they know about it so that after the medical camp, you need any assistance, you need any follow-up, they can guide you on how to go about it. And that is a win for you and a win for everyone in ensuring we stay healthy. So we need to look at it in the global health is a diverse space and it looks at you at a personal level, you at a social level, society level, and the global component of it, the global aspect. And it is everyone that has a role. And I can acknowledge the pharmacists who have been doing an amazing job. There are people who are driving the global health agenda, but we need to do more. And doing more means knowing more, getting better at what we do, and then having the community as part of our agenda so that the people can inform us what needs to be done. We do it with them and ensure we achieve the positive outcomes at the end of the day. And that marks the end of my presentation. Thank you, Hezron.
Thank you so much, David, for the insightful presentation. So I'd like us to move on to the question and answer session. And I'd like to invite our participants to ask their questions. So for those on Facebook, you can also just type the questions on the chat box on Facebook. So if you have any questions or concerns concerning this topic, you can add.
Well, there's somebody who was asking on a private chat, how does one get involved? That is the question. how does, like in the pharmacy context, if you want to get involved in the global health space, the first thing is knowing which area are you interested in. And you can't know an area that you're interested in unless you know what it entails. So one, know what global health entails. Two, expose yourself to the people who are in that space. Let's see, for example, the work that we do with agriculture. We are actually, most of our work is in the global health space because we have an interest in mental health. We have an interest in non-communicable diseases, neglected tropical diseases, sexual reproductive health and rights, and pharmaceutical system strengthening, in the sense that we know that all these global health components can be driven by pharmacists and pharmaceutical professionals. So what do we do? In whichever area that we are involved, we bring the pharmaceutical knowledge and the perspective into it and ensure we drive an agenda. And I believe it's something that has been working, because currently there's a research that we are doing at the Kenyatta National Hospital on neglected tropical diseases. And that is an interest area. So the people who we are with, at least you see what agenda can we drive together towards that. We're trying to put in place an non-communicable disease clinic, NCDs clinic, especially diabetes and hypertension at Kasarani Health Center. If it's going to take root and grow there, then it means we'll find a way to address the issues, bringing in the operational, the scientific, and the pharmaceutical knowledge at the community level. When that happens, the community is healthy and we are all healthy. So how do you get involved? One, expose yourself, get to know what it entails. One, knowing what it entails, be part of a team that's probably doing something. It might not be giving you all that you wish to get at that point in time, but it is exposing you to know what is being done, how it can be done better, and you continue being involved in it. For the individuals who are in the community setting, like as a general member of the public, you can still get involved. You get involved by partnering with the community pharmacies or even any organization. There are different patient advocacy groups. Do you ever join them and listen to what concerns they have? As I mentioned, the people that we're talking with, the people, young people living with HIV/AIDS. If you're never part of those discussions, you can never know how you can get involved. Be part of it. See what they're doing, how you can get involved, and drive an agenda with them. And if not, in that cases, in your community level, can you engage with that pharmacist or the community pharmacist and tell them, probably you could have a health talk, health education session for people on lifestyle modification, disease prevention, and all that. It starts from you having an interest. You partner with the pharmacist or the community pharmacy that's there. Then you improve access to global health services, you improve the health status of the community in your primary health facilities. The community health worker visits your home, but you've never asked how they will coordinate the vaccination programs. Probably there's a neighbor whose kid has never been vaccinated. How do you ensure the kid gets vaccinated? Somebody tells you, I don't trust the vaccines. Get to know the pharmacist to tell you, well, the vaccines you might have reservations, which is okay. We are all having different perspectives and different views. But if they give you an advice on why the vaccine is good for you, the benefits and all that, you'll take it to the other person who is not vaccinating their kid, and the kid gets vaccinated. It is a win, because when the kid is vaccinated, the chances of them developing polio, measles, or anything are eliminated. And if it was not eliminated, if they got sick, the chances of transmitting that virus to your people are also high. So it is a benefit. It's kind of you cushioning yourself by doing the right thing for them. And it starts from get exposed, seek to support somewhere, seek to get the information. And that will be a win for everyone. Thank you.
David, I've posted a question there.
Okay.
Maybe you could have a look at that.
How can pharmacists be empowered or educated on unlimited role they can play in their setup in terms of services like you've mentioned? Well, what I realize is pharmacy is diverse. And as pharmacy is getting diverse, it means there's so much that we can do. And we're just human as well. So we can't do everything. But we have to acknowledge there's so many roles. So one thing is getting the trainings being done. As I mentioned, mental health, there's so much room for pharmacists to get involved. Psychotherapy sessions, counseling and all. But it can only be done when we have training programs for pharmacists on mental health services. We have training programs for people on health communication and health advocacy. We have training programs for people, let's say, for example, in FGM. People need to mitigate the impacts of FGM. They can be part of it. We're part of the community. Non-communicable diseases. People know how they should be managed, but do they have a program to ensure that we can have this follow-up? Imagine the fitness specialists, fitness experts have these guides in place that they help people move through their fitness journey and all that. How about in our pharmacy practice? Do we document how we are managing our patient? Do we chart that plot? And it starts from doing the training and knowing what needs to be done, but we focus on one end, do it perfectly well, let the people who are interested take it up. And that is something that we are thinking of in our pharmaceutical system strengthening, that we can bring in on board programs, training programs, so that whoever wants to drive an agenda in that line, you can learn. And once you learn, you can practice in that space and ensure people can achieve quality health outcomes because you did the right thing. I hope that answers you, Hezron. And also another thing, we can partner with some of the professional societies, just to add on that. We can partner with some of the professional societies because they have the membership who are involved. Then these professional societies help ramp up that agenda to disseminate that information to those who need it. If you want to empower pharmacists, we can't empower pharmacists unless they know they're being empowered, there's a resource for them. So that is where now collaboration with the professional societies will be very critical for us.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. I'm seeing a comment from Kevin Murithi. He's saying psychiatric pharmacy is a branch of pharmacy where one can contribute on mental health as a pharmacist. Yeah. Maybe if you have a comment on that.
Yeah, there is definitely. We have psychiatric pharmacy as a branch of pharmacy, which is important. The unfortunate bit is in psychiatric pharmacy, we look at it at the advanced level of care. And I think in Kenya, the people who we can say we have psychiatric pharmacies in Mathare Hospital, yes, and maybe Kenyatta National Hospital. Actually, Kenyatta doesn't have any psychiatric pharmacists. We have them in Mathare National Hospital, yeah, teaching and referral hospital along Thika Road. So what are the other aspects that we can do? It is an area that we can pursue and venture in. That would be the specialized level of care when we're looking at medications. But before that, we can integrate the psychotherapy because the general public, most of the people who need the services and the care are at the local community level. So if we can do the psychotherapy counseling sessions, have them integrated in our care, because we are moving from just offering products to giving services, pharmaceutical services. And these are some of the things that we can do. And if we can integrate it, let's say in Kenya, we have over 5,000 pharmacists at the current moment. If 5,000 pharmacists can learn about psychotherapy counseling, then it means in a day, if they attend only to 2 people, it means in a week, 5,000 times 2 is 10,000 times 7, that is 70,000 Kenyans who have access to psychotherapy counseling. Is that not a win? So I think that is where we can look at it. But psychiatric pharmacy is there. It is an area that someone who is interested can pursue definitely and make an impact in that space. But acknowledge we cannot all get there, but everybody needs help. So we can start from somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, David. So I don't think there's any other question. On Facebook, we just have a comment from Nahashon Miriki who's saying, nice topic, I'm enjoying the good work. So if we have no other question, I think maybe we could end the session by maybe giving closing remarks from you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone who has joined our session today. For the people who are watching on Facebook, it's a pleasure. Those who are not able to will have the recording uploaded on our YouTube channel. What I would say is global health is as diverse as the world is. And as diverse as it is, it needs every other person's contribution. And that contribution starts from us seeing what role we can play, getting into the ring and playing that role the best way we can. You might not do everything, but you can do something. And that single thing that you'll do will make a difference in the lives of others. As Agriculture, we commit to continue doing this work. We'll do the health roundups, we'll do the program that we're doing. And at the end of the day, more people will be calling on more people to join us and help us do the work. The question is whether you'll be willing to join in and do the work as well, or you'll take a back step and start like the same way we've always been pointing fingers, oh, we need this, we need this. No, it's time to act. Let's act together and let's drive the agenda for a better health system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we'll just end the session now, and thank you so much for putting in your time and joining us for the session today. So this video is going to be shared on our YouTube channel, so you can look out for it and share with your colleagues. Then also look out for the next session that we're going to be having next Sunday same time on Sunday at 4 p.m. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a blessed weekend and a good week ahead of you.
Thank you and have a great time.